Do you struggle to help children identify and manage their feelings? We have an expert here today to answer this question and more. Hi, I'm Sonia. Welcome to Mac Time, where we talk about all things early childhood. Today we have Dr. Kaylene Henderson joining us from the Gold Coast of Australia. Welcome, Kaylene.
Hi, thank you, Sonia. Thanks for inviting me.
It's great to have you here. Would you like to tell us a little bit about yourself and what you've come to speak with us about today?
Yeah, sure. So I'm a medical specialist. I graduated from the University of Queensland Medical School almost 20 years ago, alarmingly. I went on to specialise in psychiatry and then subspecialise in child psychiatry. And I guess I've always loved what I do, but it was really when I became a parent myself for the first time around 9 years ago now, that it struck me how fortunate I was to have had such a lot of training in research based guidance around behaviour, the best way to teach children about emotions, and the best way to help children to manage their emotions, that I became really passionate about sharing that education with parents and early childhood educators.
So for parents and teachers, teaching children how to manage and identify their feelings is really important, isn't it? Are you able to share with us some strategies and ideas for parents and teachers working with children?
Absolutely. I think teaching children about emotions and how to manage them is one of our very important roles, both as educators and parents. And there's a few ways we can do this, even with infants and very young children. So one of the most important things that I think we can do, and that some people do instinctively, is mirroring children's emotions by mirroring their non-verbal cues. So their facial expressions, how they hold their body. I'm sure you've seen people do this yourself. Perhaps you do it yourself. For an example, when children are looking sad, showing them your sad face, looking a bit sad yourself. When children are feeling frustrated, looking frustrated, conveying that with your face that you understand. Similarly, when they're feeling disappointed, frightened, angry, etc. I think even with babies, the important thing when we do that is that children start to make the link, even from a very young age, that what they're feeling inside looks like what we're showing them. And that's really helpful for children because we all want to raise children who are empathic human beings. And one of the really easy ways we can start to develop that sense of empathy in children is by providing this link. So that, for example, when they see a sad face on one of their friends, they've had that teaching, they've had that experience, and they can start to recognise, hey, I've had that feeling. It feels like I've experienced what I can see on my friend, and it feels like this. The other way, of course, we can provide teaching around feelings is by adding emotional language. So that's adding the next layer in by saying, not just conveying with our face, but saying, I can see you're feeling really sad, or you look like you're feeling really frustrated, or gosh, you looked really frightened then. So adding words in with your facial expression so that children can start to learn that next layer as well. So the children can start to make that link between, I feel like this, it looks like what I can see on my parents' or my teacher's face, and it's called happy, or it's called sad, or it's called frustrated, whatever it might be. When we do a lot of real-time teaching like this, children do learn quite quickly to be able to recognise the names that different feelings are called, what they feel like and what they look like, and can start to express these themselves as their own language development grows over time. So the other really helpful way that parents and educators can teach children about feelings, is by using additional resources. And by that I mean, say, art. We can use masks, painting, drawing around facial expressions. There's lots of emotional literacy resources you can look up online and print off, or do some, even simple drawings with children can be helpful. Cooking's really helpful, so creating facial expressions on sandwiches, on biscuits, on pizzas, whatever it might be. Kids love things like that. And of course, storytelling and books are really helpful for teaching children about feelings too. Now, there are series that have been particularly developed for children to teach them about feelings, and there's a little book that parents and teachers are very welcome to jump onto my website and download for free if that's something that they'd like to be able to access. But any story can be used to teach children about feelings. So as a teacher or a parent reading a book, if there's a character in the book that looks sad or looks disappointed, the teacher or parent can simply say, gosh, this child's looking very disappointed, aren't they? Where are your disappointed faces? Yep, you all look very disappointed. Here's my disappointed face. I mean, any book can be used in that way to teach children about feelings. And the more they learn this, the more they learn what these feelings look like, what they're called, they can start to use this language themselves and convey their feelings using words, which is what we want for children, particularly as they head towards school.
What about if there's a time when you're busy, you might be breastfeeding another child or in the middle of something? Are these times okay to use distraction?
It's a good question, and I think it depends on how the distraction is delivered. When we think about what's most helpful for children in helping them to calm down, I think it's really helpful to think about what's most helpful for us, because ultimately we're wired the same. Often when I'm presenting to parents and educators, I often give them an example of what a helpful response might be, and I often ask them to imagine that they've had a dreadful, dreadful day and they're feeling completely rotten and overwhelmed, and they can't wait to get home into the arms of their partner and be met with some helpful response from their partner. And I ask them what would be most helpful for them in helping them to feel better. If we imagine our partner to suddenly notice that we're feeling distressed, morph into Captain Cheerful and try to distract us by asking us to point out 5 things around the room that start with the letter P, we can often see that it's not really distraction that is most helpful in a response. In fact, it would be quite odd if our partners do this, and yet often we do this with children, which is really interesting. And I think that's just because we really want to help children to calm down quickly, but that's not actually the way. And it makes sense when we put ourselves in children's shoes. The other thing that parents and educators do a lot is using logic, try to reason kids out of their distress. And we've all tried this. I've tried this. And we all know it doesn't work. When children are feeling really distressed and overwhelmed, providing logical explanations for why they shouldn't be feeling this upset is not what's helpful. And naturally enough, that makes sense when we put ourselves, again, in children's position. It's not helpful when we're feeling upset and people try to logic us out of our feeling upset. The other thing that parents and educators do, and again, we've all tried, is by telling children to calm down. And again, if we were met with that response from our own partner, we would find it equally unhelpful. What really helps us is having someone connect with us and provide some empathic understanding, is simply to show us that they get it. That's certainly what helps me when I'm feeling upset. I imagine it's the same for you and for those watching. And children are no different. When we convey to children, communicate to them through our nonverbal cues and through our words that we understand what they're feeling, that's actually what's most helpful for them. And naturally enough, it's what's most efficient in helping them to calm down. Brain research studies have also shown us that when we try to use distraction, punishment, logic with children to help them calm down, then they actually stay feeling upset for longer. It's providing that connection and empathy that's most helpful for children, as it is for all of us.
So, Kaylene, what are the advantages of managing children's feelings this way?
There's certainly a lot of advantages to helping children manage their feelings in this way. Firstly, it's the most efficient way. Rather than meeting their distress with distraction, with logic and punishment, it makes sense to respond in a way that's most helpful in helping children to calm down, and providing connection and empathy is the most efficient way. The other advantage, of course, relates to behaviour. We're all more likely to do good when we feel good. I know that's the case for me. I'm sure it's the case for those watching as well, and children are no different. When we help children to feel better, they will do better. We will see their behaviour improve.
Kaylene, thank you so much for being with us today. You've shared some really great tips for parents and educators, and I'm sure they'll find them very valuable.
Thank you for having me.
Bye. Thanks for watching Mat Time. You'll find links to Kaylene's website, Facebook page and online courses in the description below. Don't forget, if you enjoyed watching this episode, hit the like button. See you.